G'day mates, matesses, and gender-diverse folks who exist within the mateship sphere. Australia produces some amazing authors, and it would be really cool if we could highlight them. So I thought I'd run Straya September. Now I was going to message a whole bunch of people and organise this properly, but life has been throwing hand grenades at me this month. And I realised if I didn't announce it now, I would lose the wonderful alliteration that this title is. And nobody would have an excuse to read literature from my country that is girt by sea. For those of you not living somewhere that elected a prime minister because he held the world record for drinking a yard of ale quicker than anybody else in the world, 11 seconds, Straya's a new term. We're using it. It's at the stage of acceptance where we're not sure if we're still being ironic and taking the piss out of ourselves, or if it's a thing that we're stuck with forever. But for the sake of this readathon, I hope we're stuck with it forever, because this is going to date badly if it's not. Other interesting facts you should know about Straya are, we have barbies, but we don't have shrimps. They're called prawns or posh yabbies here. You can't buy Fosters in Australia. Koalas aren't bears, but they are so stupid that their brains literally don't have folds in them, and they're riddled with chlamydia. They also have a carnivorous cousin we call the drop bear, which is the only animal that is both a marsupial and closely related to the grizzly bear. Our capital city is neither Sydney or Melbourne, but Canberra. And if you are camping around Cradle Mountain and somebody asks to see your map of Tasmania, they're not lost, they're just a pervert. Run away. And if you can't eat Vegemite by the spoonful, then you're weak. Delicious. And full of vitamin B12. Onto the readathon. And I'm giving you 2 ways that you can join in. Option number 1, and I'm going to call this the Burke and Wills method. Go completely prompt free. Just read Aussie books. You make up your own rules. Got a book by a Kiwi author? It's probably only a matter of time before we claim them as an Aussie anyway. Or option number 2, I'm going to call this one Not Dying in the Desert. There are 4 prompts. Prompt 1, any book. Read any book by an Australian author. Easy, you can do that one. Prompt 2, deadly books. Read a book by an Indigenous Australian author. Pretty self-explanatory. Number 3, immigrant books. Australia has a long history of immigrants coming into our country and adding to it. For example, we have massive Greek and Vietnamese populations. Melbourne has the most Greek people living in it of any city in the world other than Athens. We also have huge clusters of Chinese people, German people, Sudanese, South African, Sri Lankan, Indonesians, Indian, Myanmarese, Maoris, Italian, Lebanese, and Filipinos, just to name a few. All you have to do for this one is read a book by an immigrant Australian or the relative of an immigrant Australian. And there's stacks of them. And the 4th prompt, the last prompt. Australia is approximately as big as Europe or the USA, but it's only made up of 6 states and 2 territories. So now that you've picked your other 3 books, look at which state or territory those authors come from and pick a book by an author from one of the other states or territories. I know if you're reading more obscure authors, this information can be a little bit difficult to come across, so I'm happy for you to bend the rules for this prompt. Look at where they're currently living, not where they're born from, and all that sort of things. Also, if you just don't know, I want you to have a look at either prompt 2 or 3 and pick a second Indigenous book from a different mob. There are literally hundreds of different cultures of Indigenous people in Australia. They are all diverse and different. Just find a different one, or read a second immigrant book, but with the same caveat. Find a different culture that is represented there. If you read a book from a Greek Australian author, try and find one from a Vietnamese Australian author, for example. And that's it. Now there's a hashtag for this, hashtag Straya September. So if you make yourself a TBR video, just use that hashtag to help spread the word, and let me know in the comments section if you're thinking about joining us and if there are any books that immediately come to mind that you might want to read. Later in this month, I'll make a video detailing my favourite Australian books so that you have a few ideas to choose from. And one last thing, that's not a knife. This is a knife.